Deep pain shows what you are really living for. And I think you kind of summed it up, because I just want to live for the Lord.
Thank you so much for being here with us again on Stuff God Never Said. I am your host, Audrey Cawthon. We do have a little bit of sensitive content today as we discuss mental health, suicide, and other mature topics. So just be aware of where you are listening to this episode. With us today is Tracy Negrado, and she is here to share her testimony and her story of her beautiful daughter, Bella, and all that they have walked through and what God has done to redeem her life. So introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and how God made you so perfect.
Definitely not perfect. But first, I also want to say thank you, Audrey, for letting me share and to share what God's done through this whole lifetime of mine so far. And so thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome, of course.
I do have to start by saying, being from New York, Italian family, Catholic family, and from the streets, really, the Queens, tough girl, and but we were all tough. So I wasn't anything special, We were all
You're special.
We were all the same. We were all loud, and
for Tennessee, you're super tough.
But I have to say, one of the things was I had such a reverence for God because of my upbringing. Maybe not relational, but boy, did I have reverence. I was afraid.
Yeah.
I had that fear in me. So spent 30 years of my life in New York City. Yeah. And I was in the film business and grew into that and found myself in Florida. And I found myself very empty because I had all the great things, the car, the house, the friends, the money, and the fame was starting to get there. And gosh, I was just so empty. Wow. And so just called out in the middle of my living room one day, and I was like, all right, what's this all about? What is this life about? Got invited to a church that was non-denominational, and arrived there, heard the pastor say, you cannot get to heaven unless you accept Jesus Christ. And I said, what? I've never heard that before.
So that was news to you.
News to me, and then I panicked because I didn't understand what that meant.
Yeah.
And so gave my life to Christ, and so here I am, 30. The Lord had me on the fast track. So I found myself in Bible college, met my husband, got married, left the film business.
Wow.
On staff at church, and having kids at 37 years old.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He really did fast track you. He's like, we got a lot of ground to cover, girl.
I was so thankful because there was a lot to clean up.
Yeah.
There was a lot to clean up. So yeah. And then had the girls, had Isabella Rose at 37, and I had Mia Rose at 39.
They're both roses.
Both roses.
That's sweet.
Yeah. And my mom's a Rose, and
amazing.
my Catholic, godmother is also Rose.
No way.
And I'm Tracy Marie Rose.
Oh, I knew the Marie. I didn't know the Rose.
Yeah, so
that's cute.
Yeah. And we stayed in Florida, and we raised the girls in South Florida. A couple of church plants. We did
amazing
church plant in Tampa, and homeschooled. And then
it's the good life.
Yeah, it was great. It was really sweet because I got to learn all over again.
Right.
And the stuff that I didn't know.
Yes.
And then I became this Latin lover. I loved
Cece
teaching. Yep.
Conversations.
And I was the Latin teacher. And I just loved it. And it was great because I got to grow with the girls.
Yeah.
Too. And, went from kids ministry all the way up to high school ministry.
Wow.
With them, and while still doing women's ministry and being a church leader and being
wearing
a
all the hats.
Wife, and and so so we stayed in Florida, and we found ourselves then in a little bit northern part of South Florida, and then one day we just started praying, And for the beginning of the year, we would always do like a New Year's prayer. And Jerry said, let's do something really fun. Let's just pray and ask God if there was one thing that we wanted, what would it be? And we all wrote down the same thing, and it was move to Nashville. And even as I'm writing it, I'm going, I don't want to live in a landlock. I don't really want to live. The Lord, this has to be you. It's like the pen of the Lord on the wall. I was like, oh boy. And so, and we all went. And so we went, oh, and here's the funny part. That was in the beginning of 2016. And God started to shut down things relationally, even with CC, or things were just starting to happen there that like were changing, and just all the dynamics that were important to our faith.
Yeah.
And our relationships were starting to break down. And so it wasn't until the end of that year that we said, let's just go try and check out Nashville. So we got here, God opened the door, and we wound up here 2017, February.
Wow.
Yep.
So kind of off topic, but not, had you been to Nashville?
Yes. So we had been visiting about 10 years prior. So a bunch of our core people that we were raised in ministry with had moved here.
Oh, gotcha.
And these were families that we were really close with.
Yeah.
Too. So, we would come for a wedding or a baby being born or then a baby shower. And, and just so we definitely had part of our heart was here. And also Bella and Mia were musicians. Well, Mia still is.
Yeah.
And Jerry being the drummer, I was a vocalist. And so we just that whole like Christian music that we were introduced to when we would visit.
Yeah.
We loved it. And the girls wanted that change too.
Yeah. I get that.
Not that I could ever get tired of the beach, never, but.
I know. Sorry, we don't have one of those.
I know. It's okay.
We've got really cool buildings though.
Yes. And lots of trees.
Oh yeah, trees.
Lots of trees.
Hills.
Lots of trees.
Some
lots of green here. Yes. Yes.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So that's how we got here.
Awesome. So you got here, and now you guys are, you have a nonprofit called Nothing Hidden.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about Nothing Hidden?
Yeah. So how Nothing Hidden birthed actually was because of a need that we saw because of what we went through with our firstborn. And so Bella struggled with mental health, and which led her to taking her life 5 years ago when she was 18. And that very day, Jerry and I we just couldn't bear the thought of another family going through what we did, and not knowing who to turn to, or just tools, or how to, like, where to even start. Do you start with when you start to see things happening in your child? Do you go to a therapist? Do you go to a medical doctor? And so we said, that's it. And it was Jerry, myself, and Mia. And Mia said, yeah, well, now nothing's hidden. And the three of us just went, okay, we're going to do something where we can share with families. So we began at her celebration of life, at Bella's celebration of life. We launched Nothing Hidden. And our purpose and our heart really is to support and educate parents that have children that are suffering with mental health as an illness, because there's a difference between situational, right? And a clinical.
Yeah.
And so our heart was, let's find the problems early that we didn't know were signs of mental health. When she was little. Later we found out that it was even part of giving birth to her.
Wow.
That it went all the way back. So we've developed also some videos, and we've put together a next steps for parents to actually go to first observe. Like, what are some of the signs that you're looking for? Because those are the things that we will sometimes overlook.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we didn't realize that was happening at 2, or they weren't responding. And it's very subtle. Some of the things are very subtle, some are not. And then the next thing is also having a conversation when they're a little older. And it's not so much like, why do you feel this way? Giving them an example of, hey, when I do this, what do you feel like? When we were in that situation, what was going through your mind? And so, right. So having those conversations also when they're a little bit older, they can express more, but they're young sometimes, and you can't they can't express to you what they're feeling, because to them, it's normal what they're feeling. They don't see that there's something wrong, but we're observing that, right? So it's the observation, conversation, and then considerations. And that's when you start to dig in and see, was there a problem when there was a labor and delivery?
Wow.
Was there an issue with any blood tests? We don't think of checking all of toxicities, even allergens. If there is a deficiency, the MTHR, right, where there's a folic acid deficiency. And then the big one's concussions. The kids fall all the time, and we don't realize what's happening to their brain and their development, and it affects their mood, it affects their neurological system, it can even affect their digestive system, is what we found. And then finally taking action, how to help to take action. And since we're not doctors, but we just went through this, so that's our gift back, to really help these parents. Because Audrey, when we began, I got myself a notebook. And I cannot tell you how many doctors that I either would call, and I had my little script, because that was another thing that we also help our parents with on our website, is I got my little 2-minute script down so that when I was calling 10 doctors, I wasn't spending 3 days on the phone.
Right.
And it was funny too, because the Lord was showing me to do this. Like, why would I get a notebook for this?
Yeah.
Right. And I would write down I was looking for any glimpse that I could when I was calling about doctors. Now, I want to back up, because what was it for us, right? What did we start to see? So when Bella was born, I did have some trouble, labor and delivery. She got stuck in the birth canal for about 4 hours. When she came out, she didn't cry. Very alert, but she didn't cry. And slowly we started to see in her young years, she was very observant, so we thought she was just observant. But what later we realized is that it took her longer to process conversations, actions, and just life in general, right? I saw her clumsy. She was a little clumsy. Couldn't get her footing on things. Whereas Mia was catching on faster, Yeah. And then when she got to about that 11, 12, 13, that's when we started to see that she wasn't getting certain social cues, and maybe not from me, Jerry, or from her sister, but being out there and a lot of people around, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing too was that she'd pace a lot. Audrey, she would just, as she talked, she'd go back and forth and back. And I'd have to say, honey, can you stand still for a second? Because I can't hear you. And she'd get stomach aches, and then she'd complain about headaches. And
those are physical symptoms of anxiety.
Physical, so that's the behavior of something is beyond a situation, right? So we started to have her checked with her levels, hormone levels, and we did find out that her pituitary gland was underdeveloped, and then I always say this wrong, her hypothalamus gland. And that also was a big eye opener. And that's when things started to come out a little bit in her early teens. Oh, okay, her brain isn't catching up. Her brain development isn't catching up with her body. Right?
Yeah.
So at the age of 16, she really was functioning on a 12-year-old brain. And so So that led to having issues with depression because what was happening relationally was causing her depression. And so through those few years before she was 16, that's when we started to see, okay, there's a pivot happening here. And because I didn't dream of it being anything mental health, right? I just thought she was, acting up. Or she was just, okay, these are the rebellious years they talk about as a teenager. And also conflicts with simple things. And so I found myself just being that mom, like, oh, okay, they're going to start talking about her, her behavior's this. And some of my friends, they wouldn't allow their girls to even hang out with her sometimes.
So conflict over simple things.
Simple things.
Like what? Would you mind giving a couple examples?
It would be misunderstanding a conversation, panicking if someone was talking behind her back, which they probably weren't. And then one of the things too was she was very gullible. So if someone told her to go and do something, she would do it and not understand a consequence. Like she didn't understand, like, this is going to hurt me. She wouldn't even think that mom and dad would tell her no to do. Like, even if we did, it wouldn't register with her. So almost she was bullied also because of it. And then she would be the one, let her do it. And then she'd get in trouble for it. And then, it was a hard time. Girl. It was a really, really hard time. Yeah. And again, not knowing that this was a mental health issue, severely mental health. And so again, we continued to just pray for her. Yeah. We'd pray for her, with her, and give her these verses. And, Audrey, I got to admit, there were times where I was a little hard on her because I was like, why can't I get through to her? Yeah. She's only known a life of walking with the Lord, what that looks like. Yeah. Right? Where's she getting these other thoughts from? Who, right? How is this happening? And so that led me into, okay, I need to start praying some warfare prayer. Yeah. Over her because she is that vulnerable. Yeah. And people are taking advantage of her. And so there were many accounts of bullying, which later I found out adds to trauma because there's big trauma. And then there's little trauma. And little trauma can be as small as a pet passing or moving. That's a little T. Yeah. And then the big ones would be bullying, physical harm, being in an accident, right? Because we do think that trauma has a lot to do with, back in the day, it was, okay, well, you weren't in a war, so how bad could the trauma be? Yes. Right? Yeah. I think we do use trauma a little too freely now that everything's a trauma. Definitely. But also this was 7 years ago when mental health wasn't talked about in the church. And that was another thing that we were up against too. Yeah. Was she's in sin or you're in sin as a parent. And you start to go, okay, I'm caring more about the appearance than I am about my child's well-being and what's going on in her heart. Yeah. Right? What's going really on in her heart. And I had to fight that because I was first generation really Christian. Yeah. So I didn't know how to raise my kids in the ways of the Lord. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to all of them because I guess they know. Right. Yeah. And they have to look a certain way. Kids have to look a certain way and they have to say a certain thing. And you got to teach them all these things because we're believers, because we're following Jesus Christ.
And that myth that I feel like a lot of, I would say new believers, but I think probably just believers in general of if I am a good Christian, then bad, hard things aren't going to happen to me. Spiritual attacks won't come. My family will look the way that everyone imagines we're supposed to look, whatever. And I think those lies add so much to it's just, I hear you saying little T trauma on top of big T, on top of little T, on top of big T, and then misconceptions and spiritual warfare and wrong assumptions and shame and all those things are more little T's thrown onto the mental health issue at hand. That's so much to battle. That's so much you're up against.
It was. And nobody at the time, too, when I would talk about it or find that safe person, could relate to it.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have that person that I could say, okay, am I crazy? Or like, lead me, help me as a mom, help Jerry as a father, you know, help us as a family to, so I didn't have that kind of support.
Yeah.
Except for just a couple of friends that just loved our family well. But because again, you know, not seeing that all of those things that you just mentioned were piling up, to help me guide in that way, or to see something that I'm not seeing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I feel like our culture, maybe it's America, maybe it's the world, I don't know, but it feels like there's this big inclusivity fight of like, be inclusive about this, be inclusive about that, being like, nobody say anything to offend anyone ever, basically. So as you're walking through this mental health journey, it sounds like you don't need the world to accept you or include, you know, your family's battles or struggles necessarily, but you had your people.
I had my people.
And they showed up for you. What are some of the ways that they showed up for you in the midst of you figuring out how to parent Bella and how to love her and meet her where she is and figure out these things that you never knew you would have to figure out?
Yeah. That's a really good question, because I think it was kind of in stages, because they didn't even know what I needed, but they loved us well. And I didn't even care if they loved me, but I wanted to know they loved her. Right? So they loved her well. And there were two women, especially in Florida, when this started to happen, that just loved her and saw her the way God saw her. And they knew all the things that were starting to happen and the stories that were starting to like, okay, you know, something's wrong with this kid.
Yeah.
And they never once, one in particular, she was my cheerleader for sure. When we got here, things changed a little bit, because so the friends that we had here, I haven't done life with them in 10 years. But there was one in particular that we had that same understanding of health.
Yeah.
And so what she supported, and she was the one that was starting to like say there's other things. And then there were a few women that we met here that were just amazing Christ followers.
Cool.
And these women were, one was a nurse actually. And so she saw certain things, and they just went through the pain with us. So it wasn't anything that they really did, but they sat in it with us.
Yeah.
And especially with this one friend, her and I were like a dog with a bone. Like, okay, we're going to figure out what is going on with her.
Yeah.
And that's when we discovered, okay, there may be something here with depression. So no, mental health never came up yet. And so what my friends were doing, and what was really beautiful too, was their husbands. So our families, all their families were involved as well. And then some of their kids were close with Mia as well. So God gave us this instant tribe of some old and new when we got here. And they just loved us well. And they saw what they saw. I didn't feel judged about. I didn't feel that they were, shaming my kid, but they were being honest as well.
Yeah.
They were being honest. And again, we still didn't know that this was mental health. But once we made the decision, therapy wasn't working, like talk therapy wasn't working. And someone had suggested us start going to like a family coach to help us like navigate her.
All four of you?
So it was Jerry and I,
Okay.
and this other couple. And their daughter was going through a little something at the time too. So we're like, okay, let's let him coach us. And that's when he had said, she may need like 24-hour therapy just to get her on the other side. And so we did that. So we had Bella admitted into a residential treatment center. It was supposed to be for 6 months, where she got therapy every day. And then she'd also get schooled there because I was still homeschooled her. So it was great.
Yeah.
And so that family walked us through that. But what we did during that time was we took a 17-week parenting class on how to parent a child that went through any kind of trauma, emotional disorders. Again, not mental health, because that really wasn't a buzzword at the time either.
Yeah.
And so we went through this class, and they said the reason why we feel it's so important for you as parents to do this is because we're going to give you a different child, right? That's learning certain tools and skills to keep her mind focused and not go into depression or into anxiety. So you have to parent her that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And it was the best 17 weeks and I felt that, okay, not only can I relate now to Bella better, but even for Mia, and I was always around young kids anyway.
Yeah.
And we were always doing some kind of counseling with adults. And so all around it was really, really helpful. And then I would share it with my tribe.
Wow.
Like, here's what we learned. Yeah. So I just want to fast forward then, because we were into 4 treatment centers by this time. And also by this time, we were on our faces every day. Like, Lord, let this be the one. Yeah. And she was at that point too. It's like, I know that I know how she reached out to the Lord in the way that she could. With prayer, with like, read me those verses, Mom. Like, I know that God is going to show up. She always had that hope.
Yeah.
There was that hope. It was dangling. She was dangling from that hope. But, and then the Lord also started to show me and give me some promises, because I needed to hang on to all of this too. And one of the verses that he showed me, and it's funny how God speaks to you, right? When you think that the verse is really for something else, but it's not really what you think he's saying.
Yeah.
And it was in Psalm 71, and it's, you have shown me great and severe troubles. Now, when I read that, I was like, okay, my poor daughter. Yeah. Right? So I'm thinking this is for her. You will revive her again. Bring her up from the depths of the earth, and you shall increase her greatness and comfort her on every side. And so I would pray that verse. And then also Jeremiah 29:11 she used to call that her life verse. And so when things really got dark for a while, I would cling on to that. And I'm like, Lord, no matter what anybody's saying, no matter what what she's doing and the behavior that I see, I'm holding on to that, because I know you got her. I know you've got her. And I'll tell you what, Audrey, if I didn't do the hard work of getting on my face, seeking the Lord, believing the Lord, not the voices from other people, even from doctors, any of that, even friends that were shunning or not agreeing or, giving me the like, what's happening with your family? What kind of parent are you?
Yeah.
The word of God is what I listened to. That was life to me. I had to, because you know what? If I didn't, I don't know where I would be today after losing a child. Yeah. An 18-year-old that I had poured my life into. Right? Yeah. And then I still had to remember I had a living child that I had to live for. and continue to seek the Lord for,
Yeah.
and not put that to the side and go, okay, well, she's good. Well, no. That's another lie,
Yeah.
right? To not take my prayers off of her, either. And so, so after the fourth treatment center, Bella had a brain mapping done at this last one. Called me up when she was getting ready. They were getting her ready to leave. Now she's 18, mind you. So she has to give me permission. Okay. And she's like, Mom, they just did this brain mapping thing. And I think we're going to know something. Mm-hmm. So I spoke to this doctor and she said, it's called neurofeedback. And
neurofeedback is brain mapping.
So neurofeedback is brain mapping.
Okay.
I had never heard of this before. And remember, I'm coming now from this world of therapy. And, they had also put Bella on medication, which I was completely against. Yeah. But then started to say, okay, it took the edge off a little bit. And also by that time, she had started to smoke weed. Because it was starting to calm her, she thought. Yeah. That was the reason for the last treatment center too, because she didn't want to be addicted to anything. And so, so when I had called this doctor, she connected me with somebody here in Nashville because Bella was out of state at this time with this other treatment center. And I called this doctor, and this is when I knew, Lord, thank you. You're showing me, because every day he would say, just keep doing what you're doing. You just keep looking, you just keep digging. And so I called this doctor and I explained to her what was happening with Bella. I told her that she had the mapping, and she said, here's what I want you to know. It is the only area in medicine where they prescribe something without examining the organ. If she had a stomach problem, they'd have her with an MRI or some kind of an ultrasound. If you have cancer, even if you have a tooth problem, what do? They take an x-ray.
Look at your tooth.
They prescribe to the brain without examining it.
Wow.
And it was almost like this, like the epiphany of all epiphanies. And when I told that to Bella, she said, Mommy, I knew there was something wrong with my brain. I knew it. I knew it. And so that's when we connected with a neurofeedback center. And then we started to look more at her. We did a blood count on her of toxicities, and it was a gamut. We ran through all of it with her. And so that was our plan. And so she came back from that treatment center, and she was so toxic. And at this point, because of the anxiety, she had developed an eating disorder, but not your typical eating disorder of image, or she just couldn't get food down her throat because she was so anxious. And even on the meds that they had put her on, she couldn't eat. So her organs were starting to fail. And she was starting to lose memory. She would read something and then not be able to. So I had all these index cards with scripture on them to give her some hope. And she'd say, "Okay, Mom, read them to me. Just read them to me." She'd want to go to every worship center, every worship service around the Franklin area. We went for a freedom prayer. Like she was just gripping onto the Lord. There's got to be something. Even there was something really beautiful. One night I went into her room, and sleep was also an issue. She had problems with sleep. And so I can tell the days that she really needed some extra sleep. But she even was up. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I went into her room, and she had the cards in her hand, and she was FaceTiming with a friend. And she said, "Well, Mom, they're dealing with the same thing I am. So I figured it's been helping me. So I'm going to read them." And then she would show the card to her friend on the phone. So, and
And those are the exact cards.
These are some of them. These are mine and hers put together. And so we started the neurofeedback, and she just couldn't, she didn't think she could be fixed. So we went up and down with that hope, kind of like a roller coaster. And then she just one day, She left the house and didn't come back. And Audrey, you never think that's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
But there wasn't one moment, there wasn't an inkling of a thought that I ever said, Lord, why? Mm-hmm. Or did I ever not believe him, or because I did all the work those years before.
Yeah.
And I knew that God was not going to allow something so tragic of losing a child to break me and to cause my faith to diminish or to waver.
Yeah.
And every moment and every those days later, I just kept holding on and saying, Lord, I believed you then. Why am I not going to believe you now? And then that verse in Psalm 71, I realized was really for me. And all the other verses that are stacked, I got to see them as a different perspective. But she was healed. I had 18 beautiful years with her, but she's healed and she's safe now.
So whole.
Oh,
so whole.
Just, yeah. And part of what God was ministering to me and used my amazing tribe of people, because I'll tell you what, my house got filled with people. And for weeks, they didn't leave me alone for weeks. And I'll tell you what, I don't even know what they did, but they were there. Some of the words, I can't even tell you what they said to me, but they were there. Like, I would just turn around and there would be a plate of food in front of me. Or I'd get verses and encouragement from a woman that I met one time at church when I was with Bella. And she, for one whole year, texted me verses and worship songs.
God uses those people so incredibly.
It was just amazing to have that tribe of people. And without that tribe, because we're not supposed to be Lone Rangers.
Yeah.
Right? We're the bride of Christ, not the brides of Christ, right?
Yeah.
He sees it as that oneness, right? How many times do we see that through the epistles? that oneness of how Christ sees us and how we're to operate, how Paul tells us, right?
Yeah.
Be of one mind. If I didn't see that in the physical.
Yeah.
And that built my faith even more. Even more, that did. And it made me see the importance of not being, of not isolating. Because let me tell you something, a couple of times I wanted to isolate because I just was so broken.
Yeah.
My heart was broken. I'm watching my Mia be broken. I'm looking at my husband being broken and our family and those. But in the midst of that, there was, I just have to tell you this. There was a day where I just, I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was being suffocated. And I was in the bathroom and all of a sudden I felt my body kind of like lift a little bit. And I went, oh my gosh, people are praying for me right now.
Wow.
And this lifting that just happened, like this, that heavy grief, it was bearable. It was still there, but I could bear because I just wanted to stop breathing. I just couldn't take it anymore. And that was the fruit of the prayer of these people, because it was men and women, it was families.
Yeah.
There was something, the other thing I think is very important is marriages. There's a statistic about marriages that they'll separate. There'll be divorce of after losing a child.
Yeah, I think it's like 80-something%. It's very, very high.
Wow, I didn't even know it was that. Yeah,
it's quite high. I might be off a little bit, but I do know that we've walked closely with friends through this, and that was something that was brought up in how to help support them and encourage them.
Right.
But it was very high.
Yeah.
So
I can see
please, tell us what you,
well, the first thing
what have you done, what has God done to carry you guys in your marriage through the loss of a child?
Well, the first thing I have to say is you're not aware of it. But when you have people around you that are seeking the Lord for you, so here's what I was told 2, maybe 3 years after. Our tribe, both our Florida and our Tennessee tribes, had vowed to pray for our marriage. And you know what? I never blamed my husband because a lot of blame happens, they say.
Yeah.
And I can see
why.
I never had that heart of blame. I never had that heart of you could have done more, and he didn't feel that way about me. But we had to work at it. And I'll tell you, a friend of mine just said women are warriors, right? Christ following women are warriors, for sure. I had a fight then because I didn't want to lose my husband too. So Jerry found Bella. And because of that, I had to be careful about the things I said. I treated him a little bit more, gentler because of that. And the same thing with Mia. I had to be careful. I was so careful that even if I didn't feel good, I wouldn't tell them because I didn't want them to worry. Because I didn't want them to go 0 to 60. With everything's going to happen to me. But we worked at that. And then we also had a coach. And because we had so many people praying and we were vocal about it, we're like, hey, pray for us. We had to be. We had to be. And you know what? That's even vulnerable because here we are leaders. Jerry's been a pastor, right? Here are all the things. But we need him just as much. We need him more. Right.
Yeah. And even today, I haven't told you this, but even now I hear some of the feedback I hear about stuff that Jerry is leading is how he leads with vulnerability and how incredibly relatable it is to people, and what a humongous blessing it is that he's not afraid to walk into a meeting that he's leading and say, I am struggling with anxiety today. Would you guys pray for me? I heard just a few days ago that it literally shifted someone into healing from anxiety with his honesty and his vulnerability. Wow. And it's such a bummer that is something that we, even if we're not told as leaders,
right,
to suck it up and put a brave face on, like that's just maybe it's what we naturally do, or you naturally do. Like, I got a pastor in my name. Or I'm married to a pastor. Like, got to have it together. Got to not, God healed that. We're good. Let's move forward. Let's help everyone else.
That's right.
But I mean, we know that what is most vulnerable, what is most honest and most personal is most universal. And you guys both, your family is, you guys excel at that with transparency and honesty. Obviously, within safe people, not everything needs to be plastered everywhere.
Right.
I mean, that's true for anybody.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
But leading in a place of healing or hurt or heartache or the real things like that is what ministers to people, not guarded half truths.
Right.
Not that everyone does that, but there's plenty of that to go around. And you guys are such a gift in the way that you lead with vulnerability.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There was a quote that I heard recently, and it was, deep pain shows what you are really living for. And I think you kind of summed it up, because I just want to live for the Lord. And there's a lot of messy bits. Just go through the Gospels. Right? There were a lot of messy bits.
Any book.
In that. And so I give all credit to the Lord, because we're just following him. And I want him to use everything, the good, the bad, the ugly and the awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that when we do go through suffering, we hide it a lot of times, or like you said, put on the face.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't got that face anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's a time when you go through it, right?
Mm.
But you know what was more important to me? It was more important for the real Jesus to shine through.
Mm.
Not the church ink
Yeah.
Jesus, but I wanted the real Jesus in every day, whether I suffered or not. So I'm thankful for that. And when Bella was, when she came out of treatment center, and I might have shared this with you before, that she's like, Mom, I want to help people that are just like me.
Yes.
And, it's hard when you have a nonprofit. They say the statistics with that usually is people drop off after, first it's the cause when things first happen, right? Mm-hmm. Or they do it in memory of.
Yeah.
And, we're doing this for the sake of.
Yeah.
For the sake of those that are hurting. And that, I'm thankful, though, that mental health isn't like a bad word anymore.
Yeah.
In the church.
Yeah.
And I'm especially thankful. I'm just going to plug our church for a second because our pastor, Darren Tyler and Shannon, were so, and even Joel, we came and spoke to the youth. They were so just open to us sharing those two words, mental health.
Yeah.
In a church setting, and it not be frowned upon or not talked about.
Yeah.
You can pray and you can pray and you can pray. It's like if a person has cancer, of course you're going to pray.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, what happens if that person doesn't get healed of cancer?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with mental. It's the same thing with any disease. So it doesn't mean that we don't have enough faith or that God can't do that. God answers in different ways for different people, for different purposes.
Yeah.
His thoughts are above our thoughts. We can't also outpray it.
Yeah.
Right. But I was very thankful that that Darren opened up the doors of the church for us to share. And it also opened the doors of a few schools. We got to speak at a school, and also for all of our pastor friends in South Florida, that we were starting to bring this to the surface, that this is an issue.
Yeah.
This is an issue that the church, why can't we deal with it?
Yeah.
We're the church.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
If the world is dealing with it and they're starting to address it and starting to help people and have these treatment centers and have these programs for these kids.
Yeah.
Well, we're the church. Let's do it better.
Yeah. And I feel like that takes it even further to say you can love Jesus and struggle with mental health.
Amen.
They are not one or the other. It is not I don't love Jesus enough. I don't trust his word enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
They go hand in hand.
They do.
They can.
They do.
That's so good. Yeah. And I love that. I would love to see nothing hidden in more churches and more spoken of, and even branched off, because clearly your heart for this is help as many people as possible, because even just you describing all the things you had to go through to get one answer for one question. And you have basically put this in a step-by-step for here's what helped us. Obviously every story is different. Every family person struggling is different, but you have at least a starting point. At least try these things. Here's what helped us. And you worked really hard to put all that together. So I think that is such a blessing for families who are walking through this and feeling alone. How are your friends and family and support your tribe, as you said, how are they supporting you even now? 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years this year.
Just past 5 years. Yeah. Just still loving us well. And also, they're still remembering her. Yeah. It's her birthday this summer, and the little notes that I got, and and just being available. And I think mostly not having to be my cheerleader so much anymore, but just listening,
Yeah.
And being available to us. They're still all in our lives.
Yeah.
And then we've accumulated a few others, even like you that didn't know Bella or us when we went through that time, and a few others that are close to us too. So just that comfort. They just give us that comfort, and that goes a longer way than you would think.
Yeah.
I also feel like you never get over it, right? It's always with you.
Yeah.
But it's how you wear it.
Yeah.
It's how you wear it. And there's times where I am very sensitive to certain things, or I'll even ask the Lord, can you just can I see a girl today that looks like her, just because I need to?
Yeah.
Or a friend will call me and say, I saw a girl today that looked just like,
Oh.
or I'll get,
So
in a text a butterfly because,
Yeah.
which you do a lot, which I'm thankful for.
Every time I see a butterfly, I think of Bella. And
Something.
even this morning, I didn't tell you this, even this morning, I always try not to open social media in the mornings. But I woke up at 3:30 this morning, so I was like, well, what the heck, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I did after my Bible time. I opened it. The first thing was it was a picture of one of those little whatever things, reels. It was just, the screen was filled with butterflies. And the words over it were just, tell a mom that they're doing great today. And I was like,
Oh my
this is Jesus. I was going to text it to you, but it was 4 a.m. So I didn't.
Oh my gosh. I didn't get up till 4:30.
Oh, you slept in.
But yeah.
Isn't that precious? Like just those things. I love God just meets us in our ways to speak with us. Mine's the 42 thing. You have the butterflies. And he even talks to me about Bella through butterflies. You know what I mean? I just I'm praying over this conversation and I get a screen filled with butterflies. He's just so cool and so intentional, and he does not forget a thing. I think sometimes we, the friends of people going through hard things, mental health, loss of a child, whatever it is, being the outside of that, not having walked through it, I think the natural human thing to think is don't bring it up. Don't remind them. Don't say her name. Don't.
Yeah.
You seem like you're having a great day. I don't want to make you sad.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's probably the opposite of that.
It's the opposite, except for
Yes,
there's
what's
that
the except
one
for?
thing. And I
Please
share
say.
this so that people understand or know. During the holidays, there's at least one or two people that say something that hurts in a bad way. And they'll say, oh, this must be a hard time for you. And I go, why would they say that? It sounds good and like
like they're trying to be compassionate,
being compassionate,
or
but it doesn't. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm going to say. That is not a helpful thing to say.
So it helps when she's remembered with joy.
With joy, right? Or to I'm not walking around sad. I might have been thinking of the holiday and the funny things she did on that holiday, or that sometimes I think of her just kind of walking and holding my hand, and we're not in that pain anymore. 5 years later.
Yeah.
So last, and even around her birthday, or I could never go through what you went through. It's like, oh, that's a hard thing to say to,
Yeah.
So Jerry and I were kidding one day. We were like, we're going to make a little booklet on all the things not to say.
That actually might be really helpful
to say.
That would probably be a very good booklet to have.
Yeah.
Maybe include in some nothing hidden curriculum.
Right. Maybe
because and then just hand it out to.
That's a great idea.
Give it to people and
okay.
because I'm sure you get people reaching out to you that are like, I have a friend going through this, or I know someone who knows someone, or my friend's cousin, whatever.
Yeah, we do.
Like, here's some material. Don't say these
Right,
things
yes,
ever.
Yeah. Read that first.
First things first.
Right.
Don't say this.
Maybe that is something that we should add to the website.
That would,
for sure.
I mean, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in those situations, especially having had worked in ministry, you're in hard situations with people. And so often I'm like, I will just say, I love you and let it be silent.
Yeah.
Rather than say the wrong thing.
Right.
But then I'm like, but wait, is silence worse? Second guessing yourself and like, should I say something? No, don't say anything.
Right. Right.
So even just having a thing of what not to say, or
Okay, I'm going to get on it right away.
I'll help you.
Okay.
Like, here's some things I've said. Are these bad or good?
Right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and I think also, like, I'm not truly easily offended. Except
from
when it
Queens.
comes to that. Well, listen. Tough girl, right? But the Bible says we're not supposed to be easily offended either. So,
yeah.
but I think that saying certain things or not saying certain things can really downward spiral certain people, and I just think I love you and I'm thinking of you and what can I do for you are my three top ones,
Yeah.
and then just sitting. And because here's what happens, especially when it's fresh, you want to talk about that person.
Yeah.
That's a part of it.
Yeah.
I used to go to a lot of Jewish funerals. You'd sit Shiva, and that's what you did. You talked about the people. And even, Italian culture, 3 days. We didn't do one and done. It was 3 days.
Yeah.
And you talked about that person. But when it's later on and it's tragic, anytime that a child is lost in a tragic way, it's, just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Just love them the best way you can. I also wanted to mention that because we did see how beneficial Nothing Hidden was starting to become. And we were branching out to other states because we were a guest on someone else's podcast, and it kind of really got out there.
Yeah.
And then just friends that we have all over the country. So we started to get calls and contacted about adults that are going through this, that are young adults.
Yeah.
So we've started to brand now.
Great.
It's called Soul Care Nashville, and Jerry ministers to men that are going through. Most of it is situational, but also to see if it isn't just situational, if it is clinical. So there are some guys that he meets with, and there's some couples that we meet with.
That's amazing.
Now. So, so now we're starting to help adults too. And there's an age I see that there's a little, a little difference with the severity of mental health. I mean, that's another topic for another day, but very interesting what we're starting to see. But how beautiful that we can now, branch out a little bit and help.
So
adults.
good. It's so needed. So that's called Soul Care.
That's
Nashville.
Soul Care Nashville. Yeah. And it's a brand of Nothing Hidden. So you can find it on nothinghidden.org or it's soulcarenashville.com.
Okay. So that's for adults.
Yes.
And then Nothing Hidden is for parents walking through mental health issues with their children.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do they get in touch with you? Your website, email, whatever. What's the best way?
Okay. I think the best way would go onto the website, onto nothinghidden.org. And we do have, we have a video that tells our testimony. And we also we did a few workshops that we highlighted a few things like anxiety and depression. And we had some other people speak as well. So we've captured that. The next steps is the most important thing.
Next steps.
Yes. And I think even if your kid's even like that 5 years old and you start to see that there's something and a change in behavior really quickly, not being able to cope with things that are simple. Everybody labels this ADHD. And that's also a nervous system.
Yeah.
Right. Just to look and see maybe there's something that you can address early.
Yeah.
Because the statistic was, which is shocking to us, it took 8 to 10 years to detect mental health and then another 4 to 5 years, and it might have changed by now, for them to get help.
Wow.
So now you're talking the teenager, full-blown teenager,
Yeah.
where you could have nipped it a little bit before. Because like with Bella, originally it was folic acid. We just didn't go further
Yeah.
and see what else that she was, deficient in. And
Yeah.
we also didn't see the concussions. So huge thing. So I would visit the website, and then our contacts are on that as well. And that you can get in contact with us through email. And we'll do Zoom calls as well if you're out of state.
So good. So
Yeah.
good. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been so incredibly insightful, and you have so much grace that just flows out of you because you've been shown grace and you've walked through so much. And I just am honored and humbled that you would be here today and share your story and Bella's story of her beautiful life with us.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you.
Love you, friend.
I love you.
How can we be praying for Nothing Hidden, for soul care, and specifically over you and Jerry and Mia?
Oh, thanks, Audrey. For our family, I would say just continued healing for our hearts. We do have those days.
Yeah.
And for both Nothing Hidden and soul care, I would say that that no one's left behind, that we can help them at least take one step
Yeah.
toward better health, mental health, and I say brain health too. Right?
Which is,
Like
you've opened
the
this whole
organ.
new world for me even today. I'm like taking notes. I'm like, oh wait, this could be a thing.
Yeah, because here's the thing too. Pray that it's not just about our physical health. Because without our right mind, then seeking the Lord, is altered or is sometimes shadowed. And so that we continue to seek God in all of this, and healing mind, body, and soul happen for those that we
love that.
affect.
Yeah. You got it. On it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. This was an incredible conversation with Tracy Negrado. And just again, that is nothinghidden.org. You can find them there, and you can also find their resource, Soul Care for Adults. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at SUP, that's SUP, at stuffgodneversaid.com. You can find us on Instagram at Stuff God Never Said. And if you're watching on YouTube, please leave us a comment. Let us know you're here. Like us, subscribe, and we will see you next time.